Welcome to the deep dive. There's a fascinating tension many of us navigate, isn't there?
Yeah,
Well, on one hand, we deeply desire financial stability, that peace of mind it brings.
sure, naturally.
Yet often there's this sort of lingering idea that wealth is somehow unspiritual, maybe even a trap.
Right, that definitely causes a real disconnect for a lot of people.
It really makes you wonder, can financial abundance truly align with, a deeper sense of purpose and goodness?
It's a fundamental question, and it often leads to unnecessary struggle when people try to reconcile, well, their faith and their finances.
Absolutely. And that's precisely the heart of our deep dive today. We're exploring what author Anthony Abbin, in his book 8 Laws of Wealth, calls a kingdom approach to abundance and purpose. Our goal for you, the listener, is really to pull back the curtain on these timeless principles that the book argues govern the flow of resources.
Yeah, think of this as a shortcut, perhaps, a way to understand how wealth isn't just about, personal gain or bigger barns, but actually a powerful tool for impact, for blessing. It's about moving beyond just surviving and instead learning how to wisely steward abundance for a much grander purpose.
That sounds like a really powerful shift. So, okay, let's unpack this. How does the book first challenge some of our common ideas about wealth? What's the definition from this kingdom perspective?
Well, what's really, I think, transformative in Abbin's work is how he redefines wealth itself. He argues it's not some carnal pursuit at all.
Okay.
Instead, he frames it as a kingdom responsibility. So while the world often equates prosperity with accumulation, getting more, keeping more.
Hoarding it almost.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The book asserts that in this kingdom framework, prosperity is defined by distribution.
Distribution. Interesting.
Yeah, it's about becoming a resource, a solution provider,
Yeah.
a channel for good things.
So it's not about just getting rich for the sake of it, but understanding the why behind the resources. And the book seems to tackle some pretty entrenched views, doesn't it? Like that idea that holiness means you have to be poor, the poverty gospel.
Right.
Or the other extreme, the prosperity gospel, which sometimes sounds like God is just a cosmic vending machine. How does Abbin navigate that?
Yeah, that's a crucial point. And the material is very intentional about avoiding those extremes. It really aims to present a balanced, what the author calls a biblical center.
Okay.
It emphasizes that true wealth, in what Abbin calls God's economy, isn't just narrowly confined to your bank account.
That's fascinating. So if it's not just money, then what is true wealth from this perspective?
Well, if we broaden our view, true wealth, as presented in the book, it's multifaceted. Yes, finances are part of it, definitely. But it's much more. It includes wisdom, drawing from Proverbs. It includes strong relationships, good health, inner peace,
Okay.
and perhaps most vitally, a life deeply aligned with your divine purpose. Money, then, is simply one stream, flowing into this much larger reservoir of abundance.
That makes a lot of sense. But, okay, if this kingdom framework suggests a path to abundance, why do so many people, even people committed to their faith, find themselves struggling financially?
Right.
The book dives into 3 core reasons that really hit home for me.
It does. The first is what Abbin terms mindset misalignment.
Okay.
You see, many of us carry these subconscious beliefs about money that actually contradict the very principles the book lays out.
Like what?
Well, a classic example is misinterpreting 1 Timothy 6:10. People often say money is the root of all evil, right?
Yeah, you hear that all the time.
But the scripture actually says the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. That difference, subtle but significant, can lead to inadvertently sabotaging financial progress. Maybe by subconsciously thinking poverty is somehow more godly.
Ah, I see. And it's not just about what we believe, right? The book points to what we know and maybe what we do or don't do.
Exactly, which leads right to the second reason. Knowledge gaps. The source highlights that while many might be taught spiritual truths, there's often a real lack of practical financial education. We might pray for provision, but we neglect to learn how to budget, save, or invest wisely.
Yeah, that practical side.
Right. The material draws on James 2.26, reminding us that faith without works is dead. It implies that Abbin believes, a higher power expects us to be both spiritual and skillful in these practical matters.
And the third reason, this one felt incredibly powerful, a purpose disconnect.
Yes. The idea here is that resources are allocated by what Abbin calls heaven for divine assignments.
Right.
So if you're not clear on your unique why, your specific assignment or purpose, you kind of lack that magnetic pull to attract the necessary provision.
Wow.
The book makes a bold statement. Provision doesn't chase people, it chases purpose.
Provision chases purpose. That's
Wow.
yeah. Okay, so before we dive into the 8 laws themselves, the book stresses needing the right foundation, doesn't it? Like some core commitments.
Absolutely. Before you can even apply these laws effectively, the book says you need this bedrock, a transformed heart and mind. It outlines 3 foundational commitments.
Yes, these felt crucial. First, commit to God as your source. Understanding, as the book puts it, that He is Jehovah Jireh. The Lord will provide the ultimate source, not your job or your business.
Not just a source, but the source.
Exactly.
Right.
Second, commit to His word as your strategy. Seeing the Bible in this context as like the greatest financial textbook.
Right. Full of timeless principles.
And third, commit to His purpose as your why. This is presented as the ultimate motivation, fueling your diligence, anchoring your integrity in finance.
Yeah. With that firm foundation in place, then you're ready to really dive into the practical application of these laws.
Okay, let's jump in. Law 1, the law of vision and desire. The principle is simple but profound. What you cannot see, you cannot pursue. What you do not desire, you will not attract.
What's truly insightful here is the idea that wealth, or really any significant achievement, it starts in what Abbin calls the sanctified imagination.
Sanctified imagination. I like that.
Yeah. Just as the author believes God envisioned creation before it existed, we need that internal picture. If you can't see it vividly on the inside, you'll likely never hold it on the outside.
Makes sense.
This connects to Proverbs 29.18, often translated, where there is no vision, the people perish. Abbin points out the Hebrew word for perish can also mean to be let loose, sort of aimless, chaotic.
Okay. So without a compelling vision, our efforts, our finances, they just drift.
Exactly. They lack direction.
So clarity isn't just currency. It's like the GPS for your provision.
Right.
The book differentiates between a vague wish, I want to be wealthy,
Right, just a hope.
and a detailed, specific, compelling vision. It points to Habakkuk 2.2, write the vision and make it plain so you can run with it.
A wish is passive, like static,
Mm-hmm.
but a clear vision acts like an active blueprint. It creates this magnetic field that starts drawing what you need. It's the difference between, hoping for rain and building an irrigation system.
That's a great analogy, and this leads to what the book calls righteous desire.
Yes. It clarifies that Abbin believes a higher power honors desires born out of purpose, not just selfish ambition.
Okay.
So if your desire is genuinely to glorify God and bless others, maybe solve problems, create value, be a conduit for resources,
Yeah.
then the book suggests God becomes your partner funding that purpose.
Not just funding personal gain.
Right. Funding purpose.
Okay, that sets us up perfectly for a law 2. The law of seed and harvest,
Yeah.
principle. Nothing multiplies until it's sown. Your future is hidden in the seeds you sow today.
Yeah, and this principle of seed and harvest, it's not just biblical. It's like the fundamental engine of growth everywhere, isn't it?
How so?
Well, think about venture capital. You sow money into a startup, expecting a multiplied return later, or the effort you sow into learning a new skill.
Right.
The book shows how this universal economic truth is, in its view, divinely designed. It draws on passages like Genesis 8.22 to explain its spiritual activation.
So it's a spiritual law, too.
That's the argument.
Yeah.
Many people pray for a harvest while clutching their seeds, hoping for increase while practicing subtraction. But what you keep in your hand, that's all you'll ever have. Only what you sow can be multiplied back to you.
And this ties right into that river versus reservoir idea you mentioned earlier.
Exactly. The world, Abbin suggests, often aims to accumulate, like a static reservoir, just holding on to resources. But the kingdom philosophy is about circulation being a river. Resources flow to you and through you. They never get stagnant.
So giving tithe, offerings, gifts isn't losing money.
Not in this framework. It's
Yeah.
presented as sowing a financial seed. It activates a spiritual law for a return. 2 Corinthians 9.6 and 8 illustrates this beautifully, so bountifully.
Okay.
And the book says a higher power will make grace abound, ensuring you have all sufficiency, leading to abundance for every good work. Giving is highlighted as like the most powerful investment.
Okay, so what are the specific rules, the dynamics of this sowing and reaping?
Well, there are 3 key dynamics the book emphasizes. First, you reap what you sow. Simple enough. The nature of your seed determines the nature of your harvest. So kindness reap kindness. So finances.
Right.
Second, you reap more than you sow. This is the miracle of multiplication. A single corn seed yields hundreds, right? Your return isn't equal, it's always multiplied.
Oh, okay. The multiplication factor.
And third, crucially, you reap later than you sow. This is the test of faith and patience. Like a farmer, you don't sow in the morning and harvest that afternoon. There's a season of waiting, of cultivation.
That requires trust. Okay, so if vision is the blueprint and sowing is the fuel, then the actual building needs, work, diligent hands. Which brings us to Law 3. The law of diligent hands. Principle. Prosperity is the reward for preparation and diligence. Abbin says a higher power blesses the work of your hands, not the idleness of your heart.
Yeah, this law really underscores that faith, as described in the book, is always active. It's not passive wishing. You can't, as the author puts it, pray your way out of a problem you have behaved your way into.
Ooh, that's direct.
It is. The power of grace, in this framework, is released into our diligent effort. Proverbs 10.4 makes it clear. Lazy hands make for poverty, but diligent hands bring wealth.
Yeah, I think we've all seen people who are incredibly talented, but just don't apply themselves consistently.
Right. It's almost painful to watch that potential go unfulfilled.
And that's exactly what Law 3 seems to address. The book really challenges any idea of spiritual laziness, thinking God will just magically provide without practical effort.
It emphasizes grace isn't a substitute for effort. It's the power in the effort. Work, actually, is presented as a core part of our created purpose, going right back to Genesis, Adam, and the garden.
Okay, so what makes up diligence then, according to the book?
It rests on 3 crucial pillars. First, discipline, doing what needs to be done even when you don't feel like it. Proverbs 13.4 suggests desire without discipline leads to frustration.
Okay, discipline.
Then there's skill or excellence, committing to getting better, mastering your craft. Proverbs 22.29 talks about someone excellent in their work standing before kings.
Striving for excellence.
And finally, consistency. Just that steady, daily application of effort. It builds momentum. It's the drip, drip, drip that eventually carves the canyon.
Right, showing up day after day. Okay, so a higher power blesses the work of diligent hands, which leads to a fundamental question about how money actually moves around. Law 4, the law of value exchange. Principle. Money is a reward for solving problems. Resources flow to the place of perceived value.
This is a really powerful paradigm shift, I think. The source advises, stop chasing money, start solving problems. Money is simply, quote, a certificate of appreciation for value delivered. Proverbs 18.16 highlights this. A man's gift makes room for him, meaning your unique talents, your skills. They create demand and influence when you use them to meet a need.
So the plumber solves my leaky pipe problem, the software developer solves my communication problem.
Exactly. Think about Apple solving the clunky music player problem with the iPod, or Uber solving the hailing a cab problem. The book really emphasizes the bigger the problem you solve, generally, the bigger the reward.
And it even points to Jesus as the ultimate example of this.
Absolutely. Abbin argues Jesus served, gave his life as a ransom, solving humanity's biggest problem, sin. And as a result, he was given the name which is above every name.
Wow.
His ultimate act of value exchange, as the book sees it, resulted in ultimate authority and honor. So this law shows value attracts resources through, well, perceived value, through excellence, like MLK's quote about sweeping streets well, and by seeing your work, whatever it is, as a form of service or ministry.
Okay, so you solve problems, you get rewarded. What's next is crucial for managing that reward. Law 5, the law of wise stewardship. Principle. What you do with little determines what you'll be trusted with next. Abbin argues a higher power tests faithfulness in the small before promoting you to the great.
Yeah, this is presented as the administrative heart of kingdom wealth. It's the proving ground, where character gets tested. Luke 16.9-11 is key. He who is faithful in what is least is faithful also in much.
So, many pray for much, but maybe aren't great managers of their little.
That's the idea. The true genius of stewardship, as the book implies, is that it transforms mundane financial habits, budgeting, planning, into acts of faith. Every budget line isn't just an expense. It's like a statement of trust, a seed for future growth.
So it's really about shifting your mindset, isn't it? From being an owner to being, as the book puts it, a manager.
Exactly. Everything you have in this framework belongs to God. You're just entrusted to manage it on his behalf. Psalm 24.1, the earth is the Lord's.
Okay, I can see how that mindset shift is vital. But, for some, the idea of everything belonging to God might feel a bit disempowering, like they have no agency. How does the book address that?
That's a really great question. The book clarifies it's not about disempowerment, it's about perspective and accountability. See, an owner might ask, what can I do with my money?
Right.
A steward asks God, what do you want me to do with your money?
Hmm.
That shift actually helps plug financial leaks because you're aligning decisions with a bigger purpose.
Okay, that makes sense.
And stewardship involves 3 pillars. Budgeting, giving every dollar a name, a plan for freedom. Proverbs mentions knowing the state of your flocks. Then planning, preparing for the future, like Joseph in Egypt, setting goals, saving.
Right.
And finally, accountability, inviting wise counsel, transparency. Because as Proverbs says, without counsel, plans go awry.
Got it. Okay, from managing resources, we move to a law the source calls the master key, Law 6, the law of divine alignment. Principle. Provision follows purpose, and purpose flows from alignment. Resources don't chase people, they chase assignments.
Yeah, this law is really presented as central to the whole framework. It's about shifting from striving, from that constant pushing, to experiencing a more, well, supernatural flow of resources. Matthew 6.33 captures it perfectly, as the book points out. Seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added to you.
So the provision, they're a consequence of alignment, not the main goal.
Exactly. They're the added unto you part.
Alignment? What does that look like practically? Being in the right place, right time?
Pretty much. Being in your correct position, moving in your assigned direction at what Abbin calls God's appointed time. Think of it like a military operation. Resources get sent to the precise locations for the mission.
Right. The soldier at their post gets supplies, the one who wanders off doesn't.
Exactly.
So how does this alignment practically manifest? How do you get aligned?
Well, the book emphasizes it's primarily through obedience.
Obedience, okay.
The source highlights some compelling biblical examples. Abraham's radical obedience in Genesis 22 unlocked provision. The widow of Zarephath, her costly obedience led to her oil and flour never running out. And Peter, remember, fishing all night, caught nothing. Jesus tells him to cast the net again. Peter obeys despite his skepticism, and boom, net-breaking catch.
Yeah.
In each case, provision came not just from need, but from obedience, which demonstrated their alignment.
It sounds like the difference between striving and abiding, doesn't it? Like in John 15, the branch doesn't struggle to make fruit. It just stays connected to the vine.
That's a perfect connection. The pressure's kind of off when you're aligned. You're operating in the flow.
And that leads us right into the next law, doesn't it? The people around us influence that connection. Law 7, the law of strategic association. Principle. Who you walk with determines what you attract. Your relationships, Abbin argues, are conduits either for wisdom or foolishness, increase or decrease.
Yes. Relationships are definitely not neutral, the source emphasizes. They profoundly influence your vision, your diligence, your stewardship, everything we've talked about.
Right.
Proverbs 13.20 states it plainly. He who walks with wise men will be wise, but the companion of fools will be destroyed. It's presented as almost a certainty. Association determines assimilation.
Wow, so who you hang out with really matters financially, too.
Absolutely. What's truly fascinating here is the power of proximity. The mindsets, the habits, the beliefs, even the financial status of those you spend the most time with. It inevitably seeps into your own consciousness.
Like osmosis.
Kind of. If your circle constantly complains about lack and stagnation, you might find yourself adopting that same outlook. But if they practice generosity, pursue innovation, you're often inspired to do the same.
Okay. And the book breaks this down into relationships that refine you versus those that reduce you.
Exactly. Refining relationships include mentors presented as a divine shortcut, offering accelerated wisdom. Then there are partners or peers for accountability and collaboration, like that cord 3 strands in Ecclesiastes that isn't easily broken.
Right.
And even mentees. Teaching others often solidifies your own understanding.
Okay. And the reducing ones?
Those are identified as, the cynics, the complainers, the complacent, people who drain your energy. 1 Corinthians 15.33 warns, bad company corrupts good character.
So it's about proactively auditing your inner circle, not necessarily cutting people off, but being mindful.
Exactly. Understanding the difference between ministering to everyone, which we're called to do,
right,
and allowing everyone to minister into you, especially to your core vision and direction. Your closest relationships need to be chosen with real purpose.
Makes sense. Okay, and finally, we arrive at what Abbin presents as the culmination of all these principles. Law 8, the law of generational legacy. Principle. Wealth without succession is wasted. True abundance in this framework isn't measured by what you accumulate, but by what you leave behind that continues to bless others.
Yeah, this really feels like the ultimate purpose of this whole kingdom wealth idea. Abbin suggests that, well, a higher power thinks generationally, we're called to do the same. Proverbs 13.22 says, "A good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children." That's a powerful vision, way beyond just one lifetime.
It really shifts the focus, doesn't it?
It does. This law is fundamentally about building beyond yourself. A legacy mindset shifts you from being just a consumer to becoming, as the book puts it, a founder of a generational blessing. It's more than just writing a will, it's creating something enduring.
So what are some practical examples of building that kind of legacy, besides just passing down money?
Oh, it could be many things. A thriving business with a clear succession plan, ensuring its impact continues. It might be a portfolio of assets structured to provide ongoing income for heirs or to fund philanthropy. Maybe a charitable foundation supporting causes you care about, extending your influence far into the future.
Okay.
But the book really emphasizes that the most valuable legacy is an inheritance of wisdom, teaching future generations these very principles we've been discussing. Because wealth without wisdom, well, the author says it could be a curse.
Yeah, you see that sometimes. So it's about creating systems and structures that outlive you.
Exactly. Systematizing your business, structuring your estate with good legal and financial advice, maybe even establishing what the book calls a family constitution, outlining shared values, mission, principles for managing wealth across generations.
A family constitution, interesting.
Yeah. Abbin concludes the ultimate goal isn't to die rich, but to die empty, having poured out all the vision, value, and resources entrusted to you into vessels that will keep blessing others long after you're gone.
Wow. Okay, so after unpacking all these 8 laws from Anthony Abbin's book, what does this all mean for us, for you listening?
Well, I think it means revisiting that central theme from the conclusion. The ultimate end of abundance, from this perspective, isn't accumulation, it's distribution.
Right, back to that river idea.
Exactly. Abbin argues that a higher power blesses us not just to raise our own standard of living, but crucially to raise our standard of giving. We're called to be, as the book terms them, kingdom distributors.
Channels for resources, solution providers.
Financiers of good, yes.
Yeah. It's really a call to move beyond just knowing this stuff to actually transforming how we live, weaving these laws into our daily lives.
Absolutely. Making them active principles, not just head knowledge.
Which raises, I think, an important question for you, the listener, as we kind of wrap up this deep dive. How might proactively applying just one of these kingdom laws this week radically shift not only your financial outlook, but maybe your overall sense of purpose and impact?
Yeah, that's a great question to ponder.
Maybe consider which single law resonates most with you right now. What's one tangible step, however small, you could take to start living it out this week?
Starting small, but starting.
Exactly. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We really hope this exploration has given you a fresh perspective on abundance and purpose.